Thanks a lot, Jeff, and thanks everyone for. Don't applaud yet. You haven't heard anything I said. So, I want to talk a little bit today about seed selection, genetics, and then kind of take the conversation wherever the crowd wants to go. So first, I think we want to maybe have a show of hands about where we're located, because Illinois is a really long state from north to south. It's about 400 miles from tip to tip. So I know it was touched on this morning, but the growing season, the soils, and the varieties that work well on those farms vary quite a bit from the state. So knowing that we're the northern end of Illinois, let's see a show of hands. Who's above I-80, north of I-80? Okay. What about south of Route 16? South of 16, 70. Okay, a few in the south. And then folks in the middle between. Okay, so we've got a pretty even spread here of what's being grown. So I think it's probably important to start with what works well in your area and on your soil. Between maybe two different things. One is seeds that are developed by for-profit seed companies that are bred and designed for a specific purpose, and that specific purpose could be high yield. And then the other types of seeds are those that are either saved or collected or propagated and reused on your own farm. So I guess the easy one to talk about first is corn. There's two types of corn. You've got your hybrid corns and your open pollinated corn. As far as hybrid corn goes, that's going to comprise the vast majority of the acres in the United States are hybrid. And anyone that's a conventional farmer probably is having people knock on their door selling seed. There's seed salesmen all over. Local co-ops and retailers are selling it. But if you're considering planting organic and you go to your local seed salesperson, they're probably, you might be lucky and have someone that's selling organic seed as a neighbor, but more than likely you're going to have to reach out of your local area. So good news is the internet has a lot of good resources for that. You can do some searching. I know Blue River is here today. They're a well-known organic seed company. I don't want to advocate for or against any seed companies because, again, it has to work well on your own operation. But some others to maybe consider is Prairie Hybrids. They're located in northern Illinois and may have some good varieties that are suited for northern or central Illinois. And Great Harvest Organics is one that, they've been around. They're part of the Beck's family, so most conventional farmers have heard of Beck's seed. They've got reputable seed, and they've now got a Great Harvest line that is certified organic. And there's lots and lots of others. Kind of sticking with the theme of corn first, folks like Clarkson Grain want to buy food grade variety, and so I get a question all the time. So what does it mean, food grade? Is there a specific hybrid or anything that works for that? And really it comes down to test weight, which is your kernel density. Kernel size plays a little bit into that, but most of the seed today is pretty consistent in size, and of course how well it's taken care of during and after harvest to minimize cracked and broken. People like John here that do not want to receive a bunch of chewed up and cracked and broken low test weight corn. So typically corn is measured at 56 pounds per bushel. A lot of our food grade hybrids are running 59 to 62 pounds per acre. It's also important to talk about test weight and latitude, because the further south you are, the closer to the equator, the more opportunity you have for heat and sunlight that's going to help that pack on test weight and density. If you're in this part of the world or farther north, it's going to be pretty difficult to get 60-pound corn out of your soil. It's probably not going to happen unless we have a really good growing season. A warm growing season really helps that a lot. Someone mentioned white corn earlier, and we do contract a fair amount of white corn, and the maturity on white corn is pretty long. The shortest season that we know of is 113 day. So 113-day corn doesn't scare someone in southern Illinois, but in Wisconsin, that's pretty risky, especially in an organic practice where oftentimes you're delaying planting and not going to be getting out there as soon as the ground hits 50 degrees. So definitely something to keep in mind. Kind of going back and thinking about some theory about maturity and genetics is that historically you want to plant as long of a season as possible without being at risk of getting frosted off, with the idea that you maximize the amount of time that plant's harvesting sunlight, pulling nutrients, and packing on grain. So that's your traditional consideration. I think someone mentioned, Jack said, 114 day on the blue, and it definitely dries something longer than that. So I think that if you're looking at an organic system, you really want to be careful about planting full season varieties, especially the further north you go, because you may have a nice stand, you may have planted it right, cultivated it right, and everything, but if that never matures, or you end up having to harvest 28%, 30% corn, that's much worse of a headache than having a short crop. So that's really important to keep a watch on that. The farther north you go, the riskier it is. I guess on the corn front, would probably also highlight that open pollinated corn is becoming popular in restaurants. I know there's, by the way, good lunch. So nice discussion about where some of their grains are coming from. There's a few people here that raise some open pollinated corn and could probably talk to you about some of the advantages and disadvantages of that. I know Haley Farrell raises some, and I know Andy Hazard does as well, and Andy also processes a little bit and grinds some on farm. So I want to talk about an advantage of open pollinated corn can be something unique to bring to the market that people, consumers, are willing to pay more money for. So typically your open pollinated corns are going to give you a lot better price per pound or per bushel. The disadvantage is that they're going to be a little bit inconsistent, and they're going to be maybe less reliable and less robust in the field. You know, across 1,000 plants, you may have 100 that are just excellent, 600 that are mediocre, and 200 that are poor. And that's just the nature of that it's not been pre-selected through a hybrid process. So I don't know if I'm talking about anything that people care about right now, or if you want to take it a different direction, just feel free to raise your hand or pose the questions. Go ahead.
I represent Blue River, but I would strongly suggest that the individuals, particularly if they're going after the food grade market, that they test the seed that's non-GMO for GMO contamination, because it has been an issue, and it continues to be an issue with some very large companies. Now, Blue River tests everything for GMO content, including the alfalfa, the soybeans. Everything that we grow is tested for GMO content. But that's no guarantee that the rest of these companies are doing that. Prairie does a good job, they test theirs. But it's important, particularly if you're pursuing the food grade market, that you test that seed that they're selling you. Otherwise, you could be extremely disappointed.
That's exactly right. So the question and statement is about GMO contamination in the seed and being careful about what seed you're purchasing. And so it's really good that you brought that up. Here's my notes that I'm working off of today. It's very few, and at the top of that it says purity, and purity is absolutely important. And by definition, working with certified organic implies purity. You're growing and offering a pure product that has been grown under these conditions. It's been really interesting the past few years as the non-GMO Project Verified label comes into kind of into the mainstream. I mean, it started out a few companies were using it, and now more and more, and it's on a lot of products in the grocery shelf. And so it invites some risk for an organic farmer, because USDA certified organic is a process claim. If you read the rules, there is no GMO tolerance, no GMO testing threshold, no statements about GMO contamination. It's a process claim that states that you will not use prohibited substances, and one of those prohibited substances is GMO seeds. The unfortunate thing is that in excess of 90%, some counts 95% of the corn in the U.S. is GMO, and as we talked about this morning, pollen travels miles. And so I know Haley and I have seen it firsthand at Clarkson that the first year that a hybrid is released by a seed company as a non-GMO, it's pretty pure, The second year is a little more GMO, the third and the fourth year. And what we think has happened is that it's getting contaminated in the seed fields. And so seed fields are typically larger on average than commodity fields, but the pollen still gets to them, and so it becomes really dangerous. And so what Blue River's saying about getting GMO results on your seed is absolutely important for going into a lot of the food grade and increasingly the feed grade markets. But in the past, say 12 to 18 months, I've seen GMO testing requirements on animal feed in organic feed systems for the first time, and that's under scrutiny because each step of the process has to be verified in order for that to be able to have that stamp for the retail product. I do know one seed company is actually...
Pure maize is non-GMO verified.
Yes, that's right. So pure maize seed is non-GMO verified, and
along with our alfalfas.
Yep, it's good. I know that one seed company is actually monetizing this on conventional seed, and they will sell at a premium seed that is guaranteed at X purity. For anything, this is a side note, but Illinois Crop Improvement and some of your third-party labs will do PCR testing. PCR testing is pretty expensive. I've seen Indiana Crop Improvement is maybe the cheapest. I've seen $250, $300 a test. Your private labs are $500 to $700 a test. We use Envirologic strip readers at our elevators so that they can be a quick test. You get a result in 10 minutes or less, and you're not having to let it sit on a truck for too long. So if anyone has concerns about that, get a hold of us. I would say that most seed companies are probably not testing or guaranteeing the results. So you can always do that privately. If you buy a bag of seed, you're able to pull out and send it off for a sample. Again, that's a cost, and there are some testing procedures out there to make sure that you have a statistically valid sample, and you can get that information from Illinois Crop Improvement. I believe Doug Miller wrote the protocols for it, and it's all public information. So those are good resources. You know, we can talk about GMO, but another issue is germ. You know, the germination. We know that if you plant 100,000 seeds, you're probably not going to get 100,000 plants, but you want something close to it. Seed's too expensive to plant seed with low germ. This is kind of ancillary, but on corn, if you're going to carry seed for more than 1 year, you definitely want to keep any seed cool and dry, but given the choice, plant your rounds first and save your flats. Flat seed, for whatever reason, tends to hold the germ a little bit longer than a round seed. So whether you're saving it in your own operation, in your own buildings, or you're buying seed, keep in mind that seed companies often carry seed for multiple years. You know, we can talk about the drought and the loss of seed that year, and then followed by surpluses and so on. But the seed companies are always trying to guess 1 to 2 years in advance, and they have to overproduce in order to stay in business. If they don't have seed to sell, what are they doing? So keep a watch on that. Most of the time, your lot numbers on your seed tags will state the year of production. If it's a year-old seed, it doesn't really bother me. And most of the seed, it's actually required that seed is germ tested. So if you're buying it privately or you're buying bin-run seed or something, that's something you can do on your own. Like I said, it can be sent to the Crop Improvement Association. So I'm going to jump off corn, and we can talk about it more. If there's any specific questions to corn, we can address those. But before I go there, I guess I'll talk about some of the color differentiations. I mentioned white, Jack mentioned blue earlier, red. These are all interesting markets and can provide more revenue. Typically, you're going to see a little bit of a yield drag with some of the colored grains. I will say that white corn has had a lot of advancements in genetics and sometimes has no yield drag against some of the yellows that are planted out there. That's also important to note that while certified organic seed is important, you can't always find certified organic seed for the varieties that are needed for buyers, and white corn is a big example of that. There's a lot of organic tortillas and tortilla chips being made and hopefully consumed. Keep eating them, but there's no one that's propagating and maintaining certified organic white corn seed that we know of today. If anyone knows of any, please share it. But depending on your inspector and depending on your certifier, they'll give more or less scrutiny over that. Some people kind of glaze over it, but increasingly there's a push from certifiers to make sure that people are planting certified organic seed. So that's something to watch for. We can talk about some of the details and nuances of that if you have questions, but the point is, if you want to grow white corn on an organic farm this year or probably next year, I would not count on being able to find certified organic. So that leaves you buying non-GMO, non-treated seed. And again, we can talk details about that, but of course the easiest is to buy certified organic seed. You know what you're getting, you have no questions about that, and that'll work for your certifier. So jump into soybeans, and then we can go a little bit into some of the smaller grains and other crops. But in the U.S., we're a corn-heavy society. It goes into animal feed, it goes into tortillas, tortilla chips, goes into whiskeys, you name it. Corn is almost everywhere, and soy not so much. You know, we all may consume some soy in our diet, but not nearly as much as some of the foreign countries, especially Asian countries that are heavy soy diets. So if you think about soybeans and the eventual home for them, I know Dave Bishop gave a really nice illustration today about raising various levels in the value stream of soybeans. And if you're thinking about soybeans, one place to go is a feed market. That's really nice. If you can get them roasted and put into animal feed, that's one of the best ways to get that direct value back to your farm. Unfortunately, those are somewhat few and far between. It's not like everyone has a roaster in their neighborhood, and it's not like there's this huge demand for roasted beans. So if you can do that, great. If you can work with people that are feeding livestock and make that work, absolutely go for it. But if you're not at that point or you don't have that opportunity, definitely consider raising a clear highland soybean. So we can talk about beans, and I'm sure everyone sees a bean typically has a black eye on it, and occasionally you'll get a buff or a clear hilum. And those clear highland beans were traditionally bred to go into tofu and direct process markets. And a lot of tofu beans have a stigma of having a yield drag. Some of them absolutely do have a yield drag, but there are some really good yielding clear highland beans out there. And what that does, if you plant a clear highland bean on your farm and you're able to put that into a food market, you have good quality, that gives you an opportunity for premium above a typical organic price. If you raise a clear highland bean and you have staining or some kind of quality issue, at least you still have the opportunity to sell it into an animal feed market. We talk about maturity ranges on soybeans. It's somewhat the opposite of corn. Your food grade corn varieties are more adapted to the south, and your food grade soybean varieties are typically more adapted to the north. Stepping out of the certified organic world and just looking at soybeans in general, Canada is just kicking our butt all day in food bean production right now. They're exporting a lot into Asia, and that's business that the U.S. has lost. And a big part of that is because of the strong U.S. dollar, and another part of that is they raise really good quality beans. You can go into North Dakota, Red River Valley, Minnesota, also a really nice bean producing area. So there's a couple factors at play, but the point is the seed companies are not developing a lot of clear highland beans for the south. The longest maturity clear highland bean that I know of is a 3.8, and you can raise that across most of central Illinois, but you get into Kentucky or south of the Ohio River, and they're probably wanting something a little bit longer. Whereas you get a lot of Group 1 and Group 2 clear highland beans. So you can find some in the mid Group 3s, but that's a way to, planting those clear highlands is a way to add the opportunity for a little bit of extra value. So kind of those two main crops are what makes up a lot of the cash crops that we see in Illinois and across the Midwest. There's a lot of talk this morning about cover crop seeds and cover cropping practices, so I'm not going to go into that so much, but we can talk a little bit about some of the other cash grains, your wheat or oats, etc. And wheat's kind of a tough crop in organic because it's the easiest crop to grow in a rotation, and it can be planted at many latitudes, almost any month out of the year, at different places around the world. And so there's not typically a huge premium for wheat on what we're able to raise here. Most of the wheat is soft red winter wheat that's growing around here, and most of that ends up in animal feed. That's a pretty limited food market. We just don't get the protein and the falling scores needed in this part of the world to raise food milling wheat. With that said, if you're able to tie into a miller or into someone that wants a specific type of wheat that's maybe not a soft bread wheat or something else, an heirloom wheat, there can be wonderful opportunities there to raise that specifically for a specific market. So don't cross that out as an opportunity just because soft bread wheat is what grows around here. So we can talk oats, and there's a limited food grade oats market, but quite a bit goes into animal feed. So I think there's a big opportunity there. And Jeff gave me the 5-minute mark, so I don't want to just ramble on, and maybe there's some questions or maybe there's something I've said that someone would like clarification on. Okay.
What are the challenges with white corn? I mean, it seems like you talked about the maturity on blue corn and everything, but what is there a long maturity?
It's the same challenge, very similar challenge to white corn. You know, the Ohio River Valley is full of white corn. There's lots and lots and lots of it. Across southern Illinois, southern Indiana, a lot of white corn is grown. You get out in central Nebraska, and a lot of people raise white corn as their corn because it yields so well, and to the point of if you get a premium food market, great, and if not, it goes to animal feed. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but keeping white corn south of I-80 is safe. Bringing it above north of I-80 can be a little bit risky for maturity. Last year we had a wonderful season for things to mature and dry down in the field, but you get a cool, wet summer, and your white corn's going to struggle. Most of your white's going to run 114 to 116 day. And I think I mentioned earlier there's a 113-day maturity that just came out, but it's pretty long to go this far north.
What's the general premium and percentage-wise?
Yeah, so in an organic practice, white corn's typically going to be at least $1 a bushel premium over yellow. Just part of it's the management and segregation, and I'm not going to say that there's huge production risks with it today. 10 years ago, there was a huge yield drag for white corn, but I really think the genetics have caught up to yellow, and there needs to be something in it for the farmer to want to do something different. So usually in the dollar range, sometimes a little bit more than that. Yes, sir.
If a person was to consider transitioning into organic, you just get used to the idea that you're going to take it on the chin for the few years you're doing that, or is there any premiums built into the process as you're going along?
Sure. If you haven't already, you're going to start to see some buzz out there about transition to organic label. It's not clear if it's going to come through USDA or privately or both. There are some private labels coming on, and I'm personally hopeful that we get a national USDA program. That way it's standardized, and it's not my program and this program and that program, so it gives clarity to the farmer and the consumer. So the point is that we in this room know that there's a lot of opportunity to raise transitional crops. We have to have some consumers and some processors that are willing to put that through to the grocery store shelf. So if you're transitioning this year, it's probably a good idea to keep your transitional crops segregated, and there could be opportunities. I think the most likely opportunity is in feed. I heard a rumor last week that one of the major national organic dairy companies, it's not the cooperative, but another one is considering a transition to organic milk, and that could help a number of things, and really it helps people get over that hurdle of taking it on the chin for those couple years while you're getting started. And so time will tell on that. We're probably a little bit early to put hard numbers on it, but generically it's something more than non-GMO and something less than certified organic. And so I feel like in the next 24 months you'll have an opportunity to market some of that, but not today.
Is this what they're calling GAP certified?
That's one of the regimes on it. You know, there's a number of efforts being made from different groups to get this. Exactly. Yes.
Is there any gluten-free production and processing in this region, or is that mostly going on elsewhere?
There's a lot of gluten-free production and processing. It depends what you're wanting to do. By definition, corn is gluten-free, and so our plant where we process corn is gluten-free. All the tortillas are. Yeah, I mean, yes, there's definitely gluten-free. Knowing that we're not in a wheat-heavy production area, it's pretty relatively easy to get that.